Okay, so today I'm going to be making a part 2 video to the arcades video from last time. This video is coming a little sooner than you or me probably both expected, but after I made that video I realized and remembered a few more things that I wanted to talk about. This video is mostly going to be me talking about my personal experiences and personal stories with arcades and my exposure to them over the years. Last time I mostly went over just a overall story for them and the history of them and how they've evolved, and a few small personal experiences here and there. You know, how they've evolved from being just, a place where you could play video games to now being more about trying to win prizes and get as many tickets as possible, and how they're more rigged and more along the lines of a casino as opposed to, just a cool hangout to play video games and chill out. There just feels to be a lot more pressure involved, Anyway, so moving on to the topic of this video, which is going to be more along the lines of my personal experiences. So, as I said in the last video, arcades are something that I have always been very fond of and something that I have spent a lot of time in. I've gone to Chuck E. Cheese's, Dave & Buster's, Round Ones, miscellaneous arcades, whether they be family-owned or some other more obscure line of arcades, among many others. So, as might be the experience for most younger kids, probably my first experience of arcades was at Chuck E. Cheese's. Your parents would take you, you'd eat your cardboard pizza, listen to the animatronics play some songs, and play the arcade games. And I don't really have too many memories of playing arcade games at Chuck E. Cheese's. I remember playing skee-ball and a few other games here and there. However, I think most of my memories at Chuck E. Cheese's are tailored to hanging out in the sky tubes. You probably know what I'm talking about, as I assume most Chuck E. Cheese's had these. The sky tubes, basically, you had the little jungle gym tower that went up, and then you could go up to these sky tubes and crawl around in them and have a good time up there. One of my favorite things at Chuck E. Cheese's was to always go into that and crawl around in there and look out the windows and all that down to, all the people and other stuff below. Also, it served the perfect place to hide from the Chucky mascot, because I was always scared by mascots of any kind when I was a little kid. But that's a topic for another video. Yeah, but I do have a few memories of playing arcade games and, getting tickets to buy just, trinkets that I was probably never going to use unless it was candy, in which case I would eat it. And then, later on I would go to places like Dave & Buster's and Round One. There's a Round One near me that opened just recently. I think it was in just 2017 or 18 when it opened. And this arcade, since it was newer, it had a lot of fun stuff in it, like it had a karaoke lounge, a bowling alley, and lots of other fun stuff within it. But this one, you could tell the riggedness was upped a decent bit, because most of the arcades near me, they do still have a few of the classic games. Like some of them might have a Galaga or a Pac-Man machine or something of that kind. But this arcade was mostly all the nuanced rigged ticket stuff. And the trinkets just, I never found anything I wanted in this particular arcade. And again, Dave & Buster's was a little less rigged. I distinctly remember, and these machines are probably still there to this day, at the Dave & Buster's near me, there are two of these big wheels that have these light-up lights that go around in a clockwise motion, and you push this big button down at the bottom to stop the light on the value you want. And I remember that one was actually really easy to time to get the jackpot, which was like 2,000 tickets or something. Of course, once you did it, it wouldn't ever stop on there again, because, they're rigged so you can only land on it so often, but at least you could. So, I remember there was this one time I went there, and me and my one friend, we each went to them, and we each got the jackpot on the two machines, and then that was like the first thing we did, and then the last thing we did before, going to cash in our tickets was go to the wheels again and try and get it again, and lo and behold, we both got it again, because it was like 3 hours later, so I suppose at that point the machine had reset itself. So that was pretty cool, because there was, at the Round One, they had the same two wheels, and those ones never. I probably got the 2000 jackpot on those Dave & Buster wheels about 10 times throughout my many times of going there. At the round one, not a single time. Another thing is the Big Bass wheel, which I mentioned in my last video as being, in my opinion, one of the most rigged arcade games of them all, as it's just complete and utter chance as you just spin the wheel and see where it stops. It is nothing but luck. Now, this was the case at my Chuck E. Cheese's, and I hadn't been to the Chuck E. Cheese's in a very long time, but when I was little, I distinctly remember that on the Big Bass wheel there was no layer of glass or plastic or anything shielding you from the wheel, meaning that if someone was so inclined, they could reach their hand into the machine and stop it and, manipulate it to land where they wanted it to. I did do that a couple of times myself. Now, when I was young, I was a goody-goody two-shoes, so I was like, oh, I would never rig the system like that. But then when I got a little older, I did do it a few times. But I was always so paranoid that a worker was going to catch me and scold me for it. So I did it, but I always tried to do it as discreetly as possible. And, there were always workers swarming the place, so you had to be careful. And, yeah, so you really had to watch yourself there. When I went to arcades, I generally tended to stay away from the more rigged ones. Like, I myself almost never actually did the Big Bass wheel. I would usually go for the more skill-based games like basketball hoops or skee-ball. And I can usually have more fun with those games because, you're actually doing something. You're not just watching a roulette spin and waiting for your completely chance-based results to fall upon you. Those ones you actually, get to do something. And sure, skee-ball spits out, like, no tickets whatsoever. You get 10,000 points and you get 5 tickets max. That may be the case, but at least I can have fun with the game. And it does kind of make sense how the games that are actually more skill-based and more fun are the ones that allot you the least amount of tickets. Oddly enough, the games that I usually play the most are the ones that give you no tickets. As I mentioned before, some arcades still have older arcade machines in them, like a Galaga machine or a Pac-Man machine. One time I saw a Donkey Kong machine. That was pretty cool. And most of the time, I just end up playing those because I don't really care about the tickets. I just care about having a good time getting to play a skill-based video game. And, just enjoy myself. So that's usually what I end up doing. And, and something else about those old arcade machines is, I don't know if this was like this at arcades back in the day. It probably was, but they have the option where you can insert another credit to continue off, to, get another set of lives or the equivalent of a continue. And then, you can pick up where you left off. So that's always pretty cool. And, I always want to see how high of a score I can get in Galaga or Pac-Man, so I, insert more credits and I continue on. So those are the games that I would always spend the most time playing. And, you see, with all this being said, it's not to say that the jackpots are impossible to win. In some places they are, but in other places they are not. For instance, one time I was at this place called Oasis Family Fun Center with my cousins, and my one cousin got the, quote, monster jackpot on this ball drop machine. And the monster jackpot, I remember, was huge. It had so many tickets, and at one point the machine ran out of tickets, and then my uncle had to flag down a worker to replenish it. And then by the time that thing was done dispensing its tickets, the replenished paper load of tickets that the worker had put in was already almost out again. So he was just like standing there like, oh, I gotta replace it again soon. So that was something that happened. I remember my cousin got me, my other cousin, and herself, what was it? I remember it was like some big candy bar or something that we all like split. So that was pretty fun, and Oasis Family Fun Center, I remember, also had a food court, which also seems to be a pretty common thing with arcades. Dave & Buster's has it, Chuck E. Cheese has it, where they have a restaurant within the arcade. That usually seems to be a pretty popular thing. Of course, you have just, like the beachside arcades, which are just straight arcades, usually like Playland and Pink Elephant and whatever other ones there are. So, yeah, I usually tend to stay to the skill-based games because I know some of my friends who like to do the claw machines, but I never ever do the claw machines because I might be able to do them, but I know that most of them are just flat out rigged and evil. So, let's see. One more story to close off this video. I know I haven't really told many cohesive stories here, and mostly it's just memory fragments, but this one's gonna kind of be a full cohesive story here. So, what had happened was, every summer my family usually spends a week at the beach, and this particular year was no exception. And every day I would go to the arcade for maybe 30-ish minutes, maybe an hour, and play games and earn tickets. So by the end of the week, I think it was, Saturday to Saturday beach house rental, and it was either Thursday or Friday, so, one of the last days we were there. And over the course of the week, I had accumulated about, almost 1,000 tickets, if not a couple thousand. I don't remember the exact number because, ticket inflation at different arcades is certainly varied. Some 1,000 tickets is next to nothing. Others, it's, big bucks, insane riches. Anyways, so I remember it was a pretty significant amount. And I was thinking, okay, I might as well go to the prize counter and cash all these tickets in. What else am I going to do with them? So, I go to the ticket counter. I get my little paper slip and walk over to the prize counter, and I'm looking, and there is nothing there that I want. Not a thing, because, of course, the ridiculously expensive prizes like the PlayStation and the electric guitar and the whatever the hell else there is, they're all way out of my price range. And all of the cheap things are just garbage trinkets, something I would never want, and if I did get it, I would never use it. It would just collect dust in a junk drawer in my house. So I usually went to my safe haven, in other words, candy. So I went over to the candy section, and I was looking, and one of the candies I have always really enjoyed is Fruit Chews, which are fruit-flavored Tootsie Rolls. So, and they didn't really have that big of a candy selection anyways, so I go to the worker and I say, "Hi, can I have as many Fruit Chews as this amount of tickets will allow me?" And they do the math, and they're like, okay, that's 135 Fruit Chews. And they pull them out and they start counting, and on 3 separate occasions while they were taking them out and counting them, they said, "Are you sure you don't want anything else?" I was like, "No." I said, "Yes, I'm sure. I want nothing but the Fruit Chews." And they were like, "Okay, fine." And they kept counting and counting until eventually they got to 135. And got a big plastic bag and dumped them all in there and handed it to me, and I was like, "Thank you." And then I left, and I ate about 75 of those in one day, and then I vomited. Yeah, good times. And one of the funniest things about this whole story is that when I went back to the same arcade next year, I tried to do the same thing, but apparently since then they had imposed a limit on how many candies you could buy. They had limited it to 10. So I was only able to buy 10 Fruit Chews at a time. If I had known that, I probably would have done like 10 Fruit Chews a day or something, but I didn't know that, so I tried to cash them all in on the last day, and they were like, "Nope, we got a limit now." So maybe other kids did it too, but I would not be surprised if what I did was a big contributor in them imposing that candy limit. But I mean, in my defense, what else was I supposed to spend those tickets on? There was nothing else there that I wanted remotely. It was just, like little tiny plastic jewelry and plastic vampire teeth and the little weaving things where if you stick your fingers in, you can't pull them apart, like those little tiny things, silly band wristbands, just, garbage trinkets that I would never have any sort of use for. So, yeah, that's just about all I got. Those are some of my personal stories and experiences with arcades, and, some of the ones that were nearby me. My area has most of the arcades, however, I'm sure there are other lines and companies of arcades that are not around my area. If you have any personal experiences or stories you want to share, I'll leave them in the comments below. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care, guys.